Hey everyone, how are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. On the show this week, Lisa and I sit down with my good friend, Mark Erelli. Mark is a singer-songwriter based out of Massachusetts. He's released a slew of albums in the last 20 years. He's worked with Lori McKenna, Josh Ritter, Mark Cohn, Paula, plus a few others. He took time out of his busy day to talk to us about all his stuff, his background in evolutionary biology, his songwriting, what got him into music. And he got a little personal and started talking about his recent battle with Retinitis Pigmentosa, or better known as RP. It was a really cool conversation, and for him to get into that and get very personal with us, we feel very flattered. But you might learn something, plus you'll learn a lot about some really good music. We had a lot of fun with Mark. Let's check it out. Tell everyone who you are.
My name is Mark Erelli. I'm a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, sideman, producer, living up in Melrose, Massachusetts, suburbs of Boston. And I've got 13 solo records to my name. Been doing this for about 25 years. And just still trying to make sense of the ever-shifting sands of the music business.
Right on. Where are you from originally?
I'm from 2 towns away in a town called Reading. So I have been a few other places between here and there, but I've kind of settled down here fairly close to where I grew up.
Right. Was music a big thing in your house? Like, were there any other musicians, or are you the only one?
Nope, it was not a big thing in my family. My grandfather was a little bit musical, but he didn't do it in a public or even social way, really. And my parents were not really big music fans. There wasn't music playing around the house or anything like that. To pick up, by osmosis. I, however, was a rabid music fan. Whether it was the radio or the big development when I was growing up, of course, was MTV. And I was there, I feel like I was there when it went on the air. I have this distinct memory of seeing Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles, which was the first video, but I think it might have gone on the air in the middle of the night, and there's no way I would have been able to stay up that late. So maybe I caught the second viewing of that.
Yeah.
But there weren't that many videos back then. They had to.
I think they played it several times that day.
It might have just been the whole day of it.
Yeah, you might, but you caught it the first day.
Yeah, and that was the thing that really lit me up as far as being a music fan. But this is, of course, pre-internet, and so it was really hard to know how the music got into the TV. And, if I wanted to be a musician, or if I wanted to be an artist, like, how could that even be possible? Like, I didn't know anyone that had been on TV, or even how you got in there,
Right.
It wasn't like you could just film yourself with a handheld computer that you keep in your pocket and, wirelessly upload it to the entire universe, So, you had these artists that had big bands and big hair and flashy lights and explosion and zombies and, all this crazy stuff. And it's like, I love music. Like, how do you do it? Like, it's just seemed like a big bar to clear, given the way that I had been consuming it. And as I kind of got deeper and deeper into my music fandom and my research in terms of where things came from and who influenced who, I found, it was from MTV. I think I went to hair metal because that was really big in my day. And then from hair metal into Guns N' Roses, and then into like classic rock. And then from classic rock, you have the classic rock, bands like the Allman Brothers and the Grateful Dead. And they were huge kind of gateway bands is what I call them. You could learn about a whole other, vast swath of American music by listening to the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers, and then kind of researching their influences. So you had the classic rock bands, and then you had the classic rock singer songwriters, and now you're at your Bob Dylans and your Jackson Browns and your James Taylors. And from those guys, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to the kind of independent singer songwriter kind of folk coffeehouse scene, which we have here in Boston, which is very well established and has been going on since the 60s. And that was the scene that allowed me to access it and see music being made on like a human scale. It wasn't like music at an entertainment scale. It was like this woman and her guitar are standing, right over there in the corner, and I can watch her hands and, try and figure out what she's doing.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing, the kind of folk scene around here. They were also all ages, kind of shows, versus like the blues guitarists that I wanted to see at the bar that I couldn't get into because I wasn't old enough, like the coffee house circuit was the only thing that I could really access. So that was a thing that once I went to college really kind of was my animating influence of like, okay, how do I figure out how to write songs and deliver them with an acoustic guitar the way that those people did? And it's just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah.
So you went to school for evolutionary biology, is that right?
Yeah.
Or something.
Eventually. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you get from that back to music? And is there any overlap?
I mean, it's all the same thing.
Okay.
I don't say that to be to be glib or ironic or anything, but this is something I've talked about a lot over the years, and I've thought about a lot over the years, because people are very, very curious about that perceived distance. But I really do think that these are all, music and songwriting and science and religion and what have you, are all just slightly different ways of asking basically the same question of like, why are we here? Where, what are we how are we to live in the time that we're here, and how are other organisms answering those questions, be it unconsciously, if they're not like higher brain kind of developed, highly evolved organisms. To me, it just feels it really, I think people think that science is like black and white and art is all shades of gray. And really the same skills that I needed as a scientist, I got my undergrad in biology, and then I went on and got a master's degree in evolutionary biology. And the skills that you need for that are hard work, persistence, the intense focus and observation, creativity for your experimental design and solving problems, and luck. And it turns out like that's the skills you need for writing songs. It's
to
almost
be a musician.
Yeah, I mean, it's like almost 100% overlap. It's just,
I never thought of it that way. That's really cool.
yeah, it's just to a different end, or a perceived different end, but I really think we're all asking the same questions.
Now, are the similarities between an evolutionary biologist and a musician of just scraping by? Are those the same too?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned that, because like lots of areas of biology, like biotech, or like cures for cancer or any of that kind of stuff, like it can get very lucrative very quick. But the kind of biology that I was interested in was like, let's go into that swamp over there and walk through it and drag a net in the water, or like collect some dragonflies and like figure out there must be something cool going on here. Let's find something interesting to ask a question about. And that shit no one wants to pay you any money for. I think if I'd taken the other fork in the road, I would either be probably like hopefully a tenured professor at like a small liberal arts college, or and I'd probably be like the guy the professor who like wears flannel shirt and jeans every day and like shows up at the student coffee house to like play his
The
songs.
cool
and
teacher.
yeah, the sort of cool teacher. They'd be like, "Oh, here's Mr. Erelli again." Like, yeah, he's got an okay voice, you know. That's
Not
probably
even
what I
Mr.
would have been.
Dr. E.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, in another lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really did try to get me to continue with my studies, but I kind of burned through my master's pretty quickly because I already actually had a record deal with a small independent record label out in Western Massachusetts called Signature
Oh.
Sounds, and I was just like raring to go. And you know, in retrospect, that I kind of regret I didn't get everything out of graduate school that I could have gotten if I hadn't been in such a rush. But I had this dream of playing music that it was just, you know, burgeoning and growing at this like incredible rate. And to the point where it was just, by the time I finished my degree, it was overwhelming. And when they said, you know, we have funding, we have these projects that you could take on and make your own, and they would slot you right into being, you know, getting your PhD. You could probably do it in like 4 or 5 years as opposed to 5 or 6. You know, you'd be set up for whatever you wanted to do after. Like, do you want to stay? And I was like, absolutely not. I turned it down immediately. And my advisor
You got
was like,
things to do.
okay, yeah. He's like, we had to ask, you know.
Yeah.
So,
So you were saying you kind of found yourself once you started college with the whole songwriting process. Were there any mentors? Was there any processes you went through like to find your voice?
oh yeah. Well, to start, the biology advisor that I took in for my major in college, this is at Bates College, which is up in Lewiston, Maine. I had seen her and her husband do a free noontime concert as part of a on-campus concert series where they played a bunch of folk songs on these guitars that her husband had built. And she was a virologist, and I was more in like ecology, kind of, you know, the level of like the organism, not so much like the microbiology stuff. So she wasn't even in my area of interest, but she sang all these cool like Nancy Griffith songs, and I was like, okay, that's my advisor, you know. And so right from the beginning, I surrounded myself with people in science that understood and appreciated music and songwriting. And then when I was on campus, I volunteered as part of the music, the folk music society on campus to kind of book acts to come play on campus. And so, you know, my first official duty on campus was to book Chris Smither, the great folk blues guitar player, singer, songwriter, to come to campus. And I literally walked around the Bates campus for 3 solid months talking to anybody who would listen to me about like, do you know who Chris Smither is? You need to come see him play, you know? And I sold out this 300 seat auditorium on campus full of, you know, probably 280 people that had absolutely no idea who he was. And he was quite surprised when he came on campus. But all these acts that would come to campus, you know, Chris Smither, John Gorka, Greg Brown, and many others. I would host them for these concerts, and then I would walk them back to their on-campus apartment where we were putting them up for the night, and I would just like punish them. I was like a college kid punisher. I would just punish them with questions about how they knew they were supposed to do music and how they did music, like, and they were so sweet and so patient and kind with me, like to a person. And it was really that kind of mentorship that kind of started to give me a little bit of a sense that like, okay, you really just kind of start doing music by just starting to do music, and you figure it out as you go, you know?
Yeah, yeah. There's no. It's kind of like being a parent. There's no book. You
Yeah,
just
well, it
instead
turns
of
out there are books for music, but at entire universities and whatnot. But I was never a studied kind of learned artist. I always preferred to kind of just like roll up my sleeves and get in there and find my own way to do things.
Yeah.
And there's about, I think if you added up all the times in my life when I had wished that I knew how to read music, it would probably be like a week or so of times. And
Yeah.
every other time I kind of, managed to get by on my ears just fine.
Mhm.
But that's what folk music is. You learn by watching others, and you take what you understand of what they're doing, and you apply it in your own way, in the way that you can. And it doesn't translate quite the same, and your limitations end up becoming part of your style, and actually become part of what makes you you, and what you pass on eventually to other people.
Yeah.
When
You
you
mentioned, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, when you start writing a song, do you have a special formula? Do you start with the lyrics or the melodies or
I wish there was a
whatever comes to
formula.
you?
Oh God,
No.
Lisa, if there was a formula, wouldn't even be talking to you guys. I'd be doing it right now. I'd be doing it all the time. There's I don't know where it comes from or how to do it. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it in a way, although it can be frustrating at times. But I mean, literally every songwriter on earth, they're really only as good as their last song, and that previous song that they wrote will probably not help them hardly at all in writing the next song. Like, everyone has to start with that kind of blank slate every time. And for me, it fills up differently. I would say if there was one generalization, it's either, a lot of times it will start from like a very interesting observation about like the natural world around me that just won't stop bugging me. Like, I can't stop thinking about it and puzzling over it from a variety of different perspectives. So it'll either start with an image, or kind of more generally, it'll start with like wanting to say something. And the song doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily stay there or end there. Sometimes, very frequently, I end up in a very different place than I felt I was starting in. But I guess it mostly starts lyrically for me. Although on occasion there have been chord progressions that I've sung nonsense things to until I find the words. But it really does vary. It tends to be a solitary thing with me. For years, it was a solitary thing. I think that's because up here in New England, we're all like fancy ourselves, these independent Yankees that can get by on our own, fortitude and stubbornness. But I actually have been co-writing, for quite a while now,
Yeah,
and I
you have
love it.
3 collaborative albums, or do you have more than that?
Gosh. So I have a record I did with my buddy Jeffrey Foucault, but that's a record of murder ballads, and we didn't write together for that one. Um, I did a record of songs inspired by the life and work of Charles Darwin, called the Darwin Song
Oh.
Project.
Cool.
Yeah, I know. That was very, very collaborative. A lot of co-writes there. Yeah, I mean, co-writing has become a very big part of what I do. And I love it because precisely because it does it make music a little less lonely. And, if you run up against a wall, you can, someone else might have a solution to a songwriting problem. And it's just fun to hang out with people and spend time creating something, Um, it's, it's I kind of think of it as like sightseeing on tour. When I was like touring around a lot as a solo singer songwriter, like it would oftentimes be hard to find the motivation to go see some cool thing, because at the end of the day, I'm the only one there to see it, and there's no one to share it with. And it was kind of like, what's the point? Occasionally with songwriting alone, it's great to write a song, but at the end of the writing session, there's no one to share it with, and you have to like run out and find a gig to like play the song. But with co-writing, you got an audience immediately right there. And there's something really thrilling about kind of writing something and creating something together.
So you don't prefer one over the other, collaborating or writing,
Just whatever gives me a new song. I have no preference or hard and fast rules really about anything. I just whatever gets you to the point where you have a new song that you can be proud to sing. It doesn't. They don't all have to be this huge statement. It can just be really catchy and something that you can't get out of your brain. But whatever gets me to that point is the technique that I'm willing to use.
Right on.
Do you think your music has evolved a lot over all these years?
Oh yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah, I mean, you thought you were going to get me, didn't you? um, I mean, it's actually this is actually something that I haven't really thought about a lot until very recently, because right up until the pandemic, I would say I would have been almost pathologically allergic to looking back. And I all I can say by way of explanation of that is that I didn't feel like I had gotten to the place musically or songwriting wise where I wanted to be. Like I still felt like I was improving all the time, and I didn't want to pause for a minute mid stride to look behind me for fear that I'd walk off a cliff or something, like I just didn't want to pause for a moment in the journey to kind of appreciate where I'd been. I was proud of all the stuff that I'd done. And at any given point in time, I'm doing my absolute 110% best. I feel, but over the years that's definitely evolved. Once the pandemic hit and I had a chance to slow down and a lot of time in my hands. And I started to realize that there were some of these like anniversaries and milestones that I would have never considered celebrating before, like the 20th anniversary of my debut record, or stuff like that. And so now on the other side of the pandemic, as we kind of try to figure out what the new normal is, I realized this year is the 25th anniversary of my first debut kind of self-titled record on Signature Sounds. The record that I made and put out like a few weeks before I defended my master's thesis and then moved on.
Congratulations.
And thanks. Yeah. And
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean 25 years, like that's a lot of
huge.
time,
Mhm.
and frankly, I would say there's a lot of songwriters that maybe have attained my level of commercial success, which is hardly any. A lot of them are not around anymore. It's
Mhm.
usually, if you last this long, it's because you have had some kind of like real success. And like, I'm not just saying this to be like self-effacing. Like, I've never had one thing that's like, oh yeah, that was the thing that did it for me. It's just every time out, it's a little bit better. It's a little bit more refined. I get a little bit closer to kind of my authentic, true voice. I get a little bit more me in my music, I think. But that said, that first record, there's a lot of stuff now going back and listening to it. There's a lot of stuff that I recognize in those songs that I still do today and that I still, kind of embody and still sound like. And I've been thinking about this a lot because that record kind of fell off streaming services when my recording contracts expired. And I forgot that it wasn't even on streaming. And of course, that's how most people listen to music now. So for the 25th anniversary, we decided we were going to put it back up on streaming services with an extra track, basically the final track of the album, a song called Northern Star. I wanted to re-record, which for me was like as I've said, like a real change of pace. Like I don't want, you can't
Yeah.
ever redo anything, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of do the 25-year on kind of interpretation of it. And my approach to that was to do it with a string quintet. So my buddy Zachariah Hickman, who Bernie knows well,
Too
wrote
well.
yeah. Is there such a thing? I don't know. He wrote a beautiful string arrangement for a string quartet, and string quartet plus a double bass is a string quintet, and we re-recorded that song in this completely different musical context. And so I'm really excited that I think it's May 17th that'll come out on streaming
cool.
services. So
I
yeah.
know. May 17th. We'll make note of that.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm
Yeah.
excited
So
to hear it.
yeah, so it's
I know that
evolved,
guy.
but
I know that guy.
yeah. It's the evolving guy.
When you were talking about collaborations earlier, I know you've performed a lot with Lori McKenna,
Mhm.
who is a huge name in the songwriting world.
Sure.
Have you had a chance to co-write with her, or?
I have actually for years I I chose not to do that. And I think she thought that I wasn't interested in co-writing, but it was for me a very conscious decision. Lori's met with a lot of success through her songwriting, and success and the things that it brings like complicates a lot of things. Like
Yeah,
I've had a lot of people want things from Lori and try to get them through
through
me,
you. Yeah.
which is not happening. um, and Lori has been, I mean, she's like I call her like my folk music big sister. I've known her since almost the very beginning. We lost the same songwriting contest together back in 1996, and that's how we became friends. And she's just been a supportive, um, kind of cheerleader for me ever since. And I've been intimately involved in her band. I've been in her band since 2004, and kind of been the musical director of that since probably about 2007 or 8. And it's a relationship that I never wanted anything to come in the way of it.
Yeah.
So I never asked her to really write. We did a couple things here and there, but nothing really ever came of it. And but when the pandemic hit, we were on a Zoom cocktail hour with my wife and her and her husband, and just trying to connect with people, And I was like, "How are you doing, Lori? Like, what's going on?" And she's like, "Oh, I've never written more in my entire life." And I was like, "How are you? Are you just writing by yourself?" And she's like, "No, Zoom co-writes." And it had never occurred to me to use this technology for co-writing because you can't really play together.
Yeah.
But as long as one person just has a guitar or you take turns, it works fine. And but at the time I said, "Well, will you teach me?" Because I hadn't been writing much at all. And so we got on Zoom and wrote this song called "You're Gonna Want to Remember This" together, and that became a song on my most recent solo record called "Lay Your Darkness Down." And that was a really big development for me. One, that you could write remotely, but two, that I could like write with one of my best friends, and it was okay. It wasn't going to feel like I was trying to get something other than a great song with
Yeah.
her. So yeah, we actually just wrote another song last week. So that's two like in the last 5 years. So we're slowly ramping
trucking
up.
along.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm still play in her band, and I that's live performance. She's so good at it, but she thinks it's not her forte, and she relies on me a lot to kind of provide a comfortable, band/musical context. And I feel like that's the way that I can support her music and support her as a friend. And so that's kind of the role that I've kind of chosen to stick to mostly. But I'm just lucky. There's just a lot of love there, and and a lot of friendship. And I feel very, very fortunate to have her in my life.
Yeah. Well, on that note of you being her band leader, you do a lot of sideman work.
Yeah.
I met you when you came out and toured with Josh Ritter, and I remember our friend Zach saying, I asked him, I was like, "So, what's this cat like? Is he going to be real demanding?" And he's like, "He's the nicest guy you're ever going to meet. He's got a, he's like, but he's just going to blow you away how talented he is. You have it all, man. You're a great
Aw.
singer. You are an amazing guitar player because I watched you every night. Um, you kind of have the whole thing, man. So when you take a sideman gig, is that kind of like you just saying, "Well, I just want to work. I like playing music. I like playing with my friends."
That's well, thank you. First of all, that's incredibly kind of you to say. And I know you wouldn't say it if you didn't, really mean it, because you're not that kind of guy. So that means a lot coming from you.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, really, being a somebody's sideman is just a lot easier than asking them for like guest list tickets, Like I have like literally one of the best seats in the house, I mean, I can say that for a span of, 5 to 7 years, I spent a lot of time watching one of the best songwriters of my generation, in Josh Ritter, uh, do his thing from like 7 or 8 feet away,
Yeah.
and I think I was always, I never quite got it to the point where I wanted it, but I was kind of always, advocating for like, can we set up closer? Like I just wanted to be like right next to each other.
Yeah.
Because it's the absolute best. I mean, I've known people like Josh and Lori my whole life. Anais Mitchell. I'm trying to think of some of the other people I've played with, that I've known for a long time and had a great relationship with, and I get to just see them do their thing from that vantage point. It's awe-inspiring,
Yeah.
and I have a job to do, and I'm focused on that in the moment, but
Yeah.
I am a music fan, first and foremost, and I feel just kind of floored that I've been that close to that kind of musical greatness. Um,
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of hired gun sort of sideman work. Like I wouldn't say that I'm like a virtuoso. And if you're just looking for some guy to like, metabolize 30 charts, a week of before the gig and come in and like, shred all over your gig, like that is not me. Um, I'm the guy that you have a relationship with, and I do my homework, and eventually it gets to the point where like I could play your entire gig for you, like that's kind of how I get into the songs. But I have had an opportunity to play with people like Mark Cohn and Paula Cole and Amy Helm, people that I was certainly fans of before I met them, but I kind of got those gigs through recommendations, and I kind of met some of those people for the first time, like on their gig, which was crazy.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different, kind of job description right there than like getting up on stage with, someone that you've been playing open mics with back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, so that's been a really interesting aspect of being a sideman, that I really enjoy, and the same thing applies. Like, I've been 10 feet from Mark Cohn when he's singing "Walking in Memphis," and I've had
God.
Paula Cole like dancing and
I
hitting a
love her.
tambourine in my face, like while she sings like "Where Have All the Cowboys Gone?"
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
is this happening?
Yeah.
It's
You finally
crazy.
got in the TV.
Yeah. I mean, sort of, I mean, and and the thing that I'm really kind of still amazed by, and if you pushed me, I'd say I'm really proud of it, is I kind of got in the TV in like a very real, organic way. I'm not lip syncing my way or like
Yeah.
lipsticking my way, or
Yeah.
Hard work.
pyrotechnics,
Yeah.
it's like I'm doing the things that I love most about music,
Yeah.
and every once in a while, I mean, I still do it a lot of nights, and there's to a very modest audience for sure. But occasionally, I'll get on these bigger stages and these kind of higher profile situations, and I'm still kind of in shock, to tell you the truth. I still can't believe that it actually happens and I get to do it, but occasionally I do.
Right on. Well, let me ask you a couple of questions about your last album, Lay Your Darkness Down. That came out February of 23, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Although I want to say we never say last album, Bernie. We just say we're most recent
Your
because
most recent album.
it's not the last one.
Your
We don't
most
attempt the universe.
your most recent album. Well, thank you for that
Yeah,
bit. You know,
yeah.
um, I heard in an interview one time with Roger McGuinn that when they played him Tom Petty's American Girl, he's like, "Hey, when did I write that song?"
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
Breaking the Clouds, man, and it's not a dig; it's a compliment. Do you think if anyone played that, if Tom Petty was here, they played it for him, he'd say, "When did I write that song?"
It's very possible that he
It's that fucking good, man. Okay, like it is so good, and to open your album with that, it's uh, it's really cool. Being a huge Petty fan myself, I mean, just when it came on, I was like, wow, it's such a great song, man.
Oh, thanks. Well,
Instant
same.
classic.
Yeah, that I mean,
Instant.
well, that means a lot. Tom Petty, it wasn't until he passed away unexpectedly that I kind of realized how deeply his shadow has kind of loomed over me in a good way,
Yeah,
like my whole life. Like, I mean, he's just always been there. He was all when I was listening to the radio mostly, he was always on the radio. When I was glued to MTV, he was always on MTV.
yeah,
When I started buying these, shiny new silver little circle disc things, that were all the rage. I was buying his new, Wildflowers record on CD. And then, he just was always there, relevant in some way over the years. And it's funny. I don't think I've ever told this story in an interview before, but you'll appreciate this, given your line of work. So I was playing a gig with Lori at the Boston Garden here, biggest room I've ever played, right, in my hometown. Um, we were opening for Faith Hill and Tim McGraw on their Soul to Soul tour. And we're sound checking, and there's the Jumbotron, or the advertising screen in the Boston Garden there, and it says that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers are playing their 30th anniversary tour there next week. And I'm like, oh my God, like in a week, he's going to be standing like right where I'm standing. And I looked up tickets and they were like $300. And I was just like, I, c- I can't afford that. And also, like, I'm standing on the stage right now where he's going to be. Like, is there no way that I can just get into this show? But I
Hang
just,
out in the bathroom
yeah,
until
yeah,
then.
right, exactly. Hide out. I should have done that. But at the time, I remember thinking like, I'll catch him the next time through. Like I
Yeah,
definitely will, because I'd
I
never
did
seen
that
him
too.
play. He'd just always been there. There was no real reason to go see him in concert because he was always accessible.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was no next time.
Mhm.
He was dead like a few weeks later. And after he passed away, I just realized, like, oh my gosh, like he's the only artist that I have listened to for my entire life. My very first record that I bought when I had like a Fisher Price plastic record player as a kid was 1983's Long After Dark, because that's the one that had the You Got Lucky on it, and
yeah,
that had the video on
yeah.
MTV. And
The very
he's
post-apocalyptic video that he made.
yeah,
One of
yeah,
the 10.
yeah,
One of the
right.
10 videos from
Exactly.
it.
It was a big one for me. And so he'd been there my entire life. And I didn't really realize how much I'd metabolized his music and how much it was a part of me until he had passed away.
Yeah,
And I had actually tried years before to kind of get a little bit of like his kind of perfect simplicity, you know, in like a rock and roll kind of format in my songwriting. I tried like
Yeah.
consciously and never could do it. I wasn't good enough yet. And it was only after he passed away that some tumblers fell into place, and all of a sudden I wrote, a bunch of stuff, and I was like, God, this sounds like it could have been a Tom Petty song in a
Yeah.
weird way, if I can even say that,
Yeah.
filtered through me, and my limitations, and so it becomes part of my style.
Yeah. Well, I hope you didn't take that as it's a rip off,
No.
because it gave me very Dreams of Flying vibes. Breaking
Oh.
the Clouds did. When I heard it, that's the vibe I got of Dreams of Flying, which
Nice.
is one of my favorites.
Oh, that's like a deep, like mud crutch cut, right? I
Uh,
mean, that's like killer. Yeah. I mean, I didn't take it as a dig at all. I mean, that's it's it's part of the folk music tradition, right? To like kind of learn from the people that come before you and to kind of filter it through your own thing and then, kind of amplify it forward, and that to me is kind of what I feel like I'm doing, with a little bit of Tom's music in my own way. I can't do that thing that he does or did, but it's part of me, and it's starting to come out in ways that I can kind of every once in a while recognize, like, oh, that's where that came from,
right.
and I'm proud of it. I never run away from it.
Yeah.
I just tell people that whenever anyone asks me my influences, I just say the Traveling Wilburys,
All of
There you
because
go.
just it covers everything,
Right. Right.
There
Uh,
you go.
Fuel for the Fire. You have a line in Fuel for the Fire that, like, you say, and the way you sing it is really cool. Can't make the mistake disappear. Coming
Yeah.
from someone who's made a lot of mistakes, like, that line hit me really hard. It really did. The rest of
Yeah.
the rest of the verse did, or the rest of the line did too. But it it's such a good line, man. You
Oh,
know.
thanks. Yeah, I never noticed that I kind of put the emphasis on it on a different syllable. I think I sing it, can't make a mistake disappear no
Yeah.
matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that song is I was thinking a lot around that time about how to overcome limitations or how to kind of survive and thrive in the face of great challenges. This was in 2020. I think we were talking earlier, but I don't think we've mentioned it yet. I got diagnosed with a degenerative retinal disease called retinitis pigmentosa,
Uh-huh.
and it was. I think if it had happened when the world was like proceeding as normal, it would have had its own challenges, like to get that kind of diagnosis, like you're slowly and unpredictably going to go blind. And now I have to leave for like a weekend of gigs or like a tour. That would have been horrible. So it was nice to get the diagnosis, um, when everything had kind of slowed down and I had a chance to process it. Um, However, that meant that for like a long time there, it was like all I could think of, and there was really nothing to distract me from it. So every time I sat down to write, it found its way into the song. And even songs like Break in the Clouds, which I wrote before I got my diagnosis, the diagnosis came along and retroactively changed how those songs kind of hit, both for
Mhm.
me and for, my audience. Um, and so Fuel for the Fire was that kind of like, okay, I'm over the initial shock of this as much as one can be. Like, what, how then do you live, right? It's like what I was saying before, like, what now?
Mhm.
Do you just let it kind of say, well, I had a good run and I'm done? Or do you say like, no, I'm gonna use this to kind of motivate me and to find solutions and to find a way to keep, doing the thing I love. And to me, that is that's the strategy I've kind of settled on. And some days I'm better at it than others, but the songs are written in like an idealized version of my voice, like I want to
Yeah.
be that guy so
Mhm.
bad. And on occasion I might get pretty close, but I'm definitely not as good or as hopeful or as optimistic as he is. But I keep singing his words and hope that one day I get pretty close.
Um, you don't have to answer this if it's too personal, but when you went to the eye doctor, was it just for a routine checkup just to get your glasses and then they sprung it on you, or did you go because you were having trouble seeing things, or
Yeah, it was the latter. I had been feeling for a while like I might need glasses, and that's all I thought it was. But I had a couple of incidents. One, I was on stage, and it was during the pandemic, and we were playing an outdoor show, and it was kind of like a non-traditional setup. We were kind of flying by the seat of our pants, and we were had to be distanced from each other in the band because there were no vaccines at that time. So I stood on the ground in front of the stage where I didn't realize the lights wouldn't hit me. And so I came out to do my show. I was like, it feels really dark. But whatever. I haven't left the house in like 3 months. And and I go to like take a guitar solo and I can't see the guitar neck. Like I can't make out the details of like where the frets are, where my fingers are. And it, and I made a huge clam on my own, gig after having, been locked in the house for months. And I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. What is going on? And so that was like, maybe I really should go get these glasses. And then before I was able to get that appointment, the couple weeks later, I was driving in Boston. Um, it was deserted because it was a pandemic and there was no one on the road. So there were no taillights in front of me when I was driving along Store Drive, and I went down into a short tunnel, and the road just like disappeared. It just was like black. I couldn't tell where the tunnel turned, where the road was.
oh god.
And fortunately there was no one around me or behind me to run into me when I slammed on the brakes. And so that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is not normal. And so I was like, I got to get in and get those glasses. And so I did go, and I did need glasses, but she recommended me for further retinal testing. And that's when I found out the specific, issue.
Yay.
Yeah. Not a great day. And again, this was all during the pandemic, kind of pre-vaccine. So this would have been in early October of 2020. And my wife. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to make light of it. Like there were people dying alone in hospitals then, and that was obviously a tragedy. But like, I had no one with me when I was going through all the tests. It's like a 6 or 7 hour long day of tests, and then at the end, it's like me, the doctor who's like in 3 masks and like a face shield, like like Contagion, the movie,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Right.
my wife on speakerphone, and that's how I found out. So it was a rough, going there for a while.
Oh.
And it still feels rough on
Yeah.
occasion for sure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like I said, I'm pretty focused on finding solutions to problems or ways to kind of circumvent challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess with the backdrop of the pandemic, just getting bad news on top of bad news,
Yeah, it was weird,
can
in
mess you
some,
up.
yeah, with some ways it was easier, as I was saying, and in some ways it was like, you know, what fresh hell today,
Yeah. No,
And
no,
this,
no.
I mean,
Yeah,
these were
no,
the
I
Trump
know.
years too, so it was like,
I know, right?
Pile on with
Yeah.
everything.
We're
Yeah.
going through that clown show covered in
Mhm.
kerosene, you know?
Yeah.
So does now that you, I don't know, have had time to kind of process the diagnosis and you were writing, and you said it kind of comes out, like, is that a good outlet to like have the music to be able to just kind of
Yeah.
get out all the emotions? Because, you know, like I said before we started the interview, I don't have full blown RP, but I am a carrier, and they kind of said, you know, if you have a kid, you're going to give it to them, or it could develop and we want you to do genetic testing and all this stuff that just scared the crap out of me.
Mhm.
And it was also during the pandemic. What a
Oh,
great time.
wow. Yeah.
So
Oh, so sorry.
I can kind of, you know, understand. I mean, you know, since there's nothing really much that they know about the, you know, cure wise.
Right.
So do you, you know, does that help maybe give you like an inspiration to write a song, or is the music there and it's just kind of like, oh, I've got this to just kind of
A
lose myself
distraction.
in for a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is to all of that is yes. I mean, I think it's interesting, you know, in songwriting, you know, empathy and compassion, those are like your two biggest um tools, right? Like it's the scales or like how many chord inversions you know, like that's meaningless stuff. It's can you see somebody else and let them know that they're seen, you know? And extension of that is like, do you see yourself? And can you give yourself that kind of grace and understanding and compassion? And so that was my songwriting. That's where my songwriting turned in the wake of my diagnosis. And you know, anytime you're up there singing a song, it's like you're trying to. I feel like I'm trying to communicate to someone how I feel or how I see things. And it's the similar thing with the RP. It's like it's really hard to describe to someone how you actually see,
Mm,
you know?
mhm,
Especially when it changes
mm.
contextually with lighting conditions. It can change like that. It can change depending on whether my back is to the window in a room or whether I'm staring out the window,
Oh,
you
wow.
know? That can be the difference between seeing somebody's facial expression and seeing just a complete black silhouette. Um, it's just really hard to explain that to someone. But you know, this is what I've been trying to do in songs for years now, is to try and kind of access that kind of someone else's worldview and convey that I see that, or convey my own worldview. And so in that way, songwriting has been an incredible therapeutic output for me, outlet for me. And it's to the point now where like if I catch myself talking too much about like shadow and light or dark, you know, I'm like, okay, like not every song can be about your RP, you know, like you know, I'm not that I'm censoring myself, but like I kind of, if it comes out too definitively now, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, this is just something I'm writing for me to get out of the way for something else that, you know, will be maybe better, you know. But it's always there, of course, in my mind, you know, as you know, you're living with it. So um it's only natural that it's going to come out in the songs and in the art and in my approach to art.
Yeah.
And in the stuff that I observe, you know, like I observe different things now. There's things that I used to observe that I literally can't anymore. But there's also things that I see now that I would have never thought to notice before. And so, you know, it's still, all that stuff still makes it into the songs. It's just kind of coming from a slightly different perspective.
Has anyone from the RP community reached out to you or said anything? Because I know it's a very small community, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah, they have. I mean, now I would say at almost every show or 80% of the shows, there'll be someone with a white cane, and they'll come
Hmm.
up to me. I mean, I never noticed that before. Maybe they were
Hmm.
there, but I don't think so. Um,
No,
so I think
you probably make
there's,
them want to come out.
yeah, I mean, it can be like it's an extra layer or two of logistical challenge.
Yeah.
And, so if those people are coming out, they really want to come out. And, I'm always just so honored that someone would have gone the extra mile to come and see me, and then to talk to me about how the music has affected them. I mean, it means a lot anytime anyone does that, but when you share this visual affliction or this disability, it's like, again, as you say, it's like you're both members of this somewhat small club,
Yeah.
and there's a camaraderie there that's
Hmm.
almost immediate. So yeah, they have reached out, and I have been I've done some gigs, for visually impaired audiences and stuff like that, and hope to do more in the future. It can be a little unnerving sometimes because I'm always wondering, like, am I disabled enough? Like, am I blind enough? Like, a lot of the times, I mean, I can see you both very clearly now on my computer screen. Um, a lot of the times I'm basically fine. Um, but then, like I said, I can drive, turn down a tree-lined street on a sunny day and the shadows are completely black, or I can sit with facing out a window and I can't see anyone's facial expressions. It happens very quickly for me. So, the reminders are always kind of there, but I am able to forget about it on occasion. It's just when I get reminded, it's a little bit of a shock,
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that. We were
Oh,
kind of
it's
on
my
the fence about
pleasure.
asking you about it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that
Well,
and raising a little bit of awareness here.
that's part of the
Seriously.
thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, one
This
of the
show
things
is
I've
not known
noticed.
for raising awareness, Mark.
Well, I mean, that's part of the thing. I mean, you've spent a lot of times, way more in backstage areas than I have, right? Like, um, you go out in the venue and where the audience is, and it's they have to be ADA compliant, right? Like there's elevators, and lots of times there's ramps, and there's stairwells, staircases with the forward edge of the stair kind of clearly demarcated with some sort of high contrast thing. Um, you go backstage, and there might be a shitty dark stairwell that you can't even see. There's no light in. Um, Certainly, there's no lights in the wings of the stage, because that's got to all be dark for the show. Um, there may not be hardly any accommodations backstage, and that's something that I've kind of realized very quickly as I've gone back out in the world and started performing as an artist, with a disability. It's like a lot of times I'm kind of wondering, like, am I disabled enough? And then I find myself in these situations and I'm like, I'm having trouble navigating this. And the message, which I do think is, I kind of give people the benefit of the doubt. I do think it's unconscious, but the message that you start to take away is like, well, why would there be any disabled people back here? This is where the artists and the professionals are, right? And so you start to get this feeling of like, well, wait, you know, people don't recognize that artists can be disabled, or that disabled, more
Yeah.
accurately, that people with disabilities can be, real artists.
Yeah.
And so for me, raising awareness has become a small way that I can kind of contribute to not just my own personal safety, but in my working conditions, but I can telegraph to other people struggling with the same or similar kinds of disabilities that, like, you can do this, and it might take a little extra work. It might take, being a little more vocal than you might want to be. But you can still make great art, and you can still get out there in the world and share it with people. And it doesn't have to prevent you or be the end of that, if that's what you want to do. But you do have to kind of choose to really overcome a certain amount of logistical inconvenience, because, despite a lot of best intentions out there, the world is not really fully set up to accommodate that, and the way that it gets better is by talking about it.
Yeah.
And you need to get a Bernie with his little flashlight.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. He'll steer you around backstage.
I've always got one on me right here. It's like, but yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot, the support network. In my own solo gigs, I don't usually have a guitar tech or much of any technical support. And I remember those days, so fondly, of like, oh my God, the guitar it's in tune. The one I need, it's right here. He's handing it to me. The capo's in the right spot. Like, oh, what a luxury. Yeah, I miss it.
Right. Well, couple of things. Where can people find you online, and are you working on anything currently?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social media and stuff, but only until I figure out a way to get the fuck off of those things. My manager won't let me, but I have gotten off Twitter, thank God. But you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I do post there regularly under duress, and I try to make the best of it. But the best way to find me is to go to my website and sign up for my email newsletter. It's just markerelli.com, and the sign up is right there on the main page. And that newsletter comes out every month. It's got some kind of essay on something that's been on my mind. It's got news about, where I'm going to be and all that stuff. It's also got links to a free unreleased song. Could be a demo, it could be a live recording. And I've done that every month since like 2001. So like that's
Wow.
a lot of music to have given away.
Yeah.
But it's just a gesture of thanks to people for choosing to tune in when there's just
That's
a lot of
amazing.
noise.
I'm gonna subscribe.
Yeah, get on there, man. So that's the best way for people to find me. And as far as what I'm working on now, I do have a lot of songs. There's several albums that probably could get made with like overlapping groups of songs, and I'm just trying to figure out like, what album do I want to make? What album am I most excited about making? And what album can I afford to make? And where do those circles all overlap? I'm still figuring that out. That said, on April 19th, I'm not sure when this will air, but on April 19th, my bluegrass band Barnstar that I'm in with Zachariah Hickman, among others, has our third record coming out. And this one has been, we recorded it basically and finished it in the before times, and it's just now coming out. So it's nice to kind of finally be able to share that with people. So
cool. Yeah, this will come out before then, so we can.
Oh, great!
We'll definitely promote that.
Yeah, it's called Furious Kindness, and we'll be on a short tour of the Northeast, a short but strenuous tour of the of the Northeast.
Nice.
Well, Mark, we really appreciate you taking time to do this. I really appreciate you doing the show.
Oh man, it's just great to see your face and hear your voice and to meet you, Lisa. I mean, I'm an introverted person, strangely enough, I think, but like I don't really love crowds. I don't like being out so much, but I have to do that for my work. But I found that when the pandemic hit, like I really missed people, and I reached out to a lot of people during that time to let them know what was going on with me. But after a while, it kind of got a little bit arduous and a little bit exhausting, and so I hadn't talked to you for a long time, but you've actually, I follow you on social media. You're there in my feed. I mean, I've thought about you and the times that we worked together a lot, because it was emblematic of this thing that hasn't really come back in quite the same way.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
something that I really miss. And you know, it's hard to call someone up out of the blue and say like, "Hey, I got this like horrible thing I'm going through," you know. So when you called up and were like, "I want to put you on my podcast," I was like, I'm finally gonna get to hang with Bernie again. This is amazing.
This is what you have to do, the trade-off.
Yeah, it's a
So,
trade-off.
it is.
You want to hang with me, you got to talk to Lisa too.
I am so glad to do it. I'm
Right on.
honored that you asked, and it's great to be with you here today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
That's a quick thing. That first night with Ritter, you said, "Hey, can you tune this?" And I said, "Yeah." And then you kept every middle song you would put it down and you'd point like, "Can you tune this one?" And I had to tell Zach at the end of the show, "Hey man, tell him he doesn't have to ask me to tune the guitar." It's like I'll make sure they're ready.
Well, Ritter's a handful, you know. You got.
Yeah.
I knew that you had to keep him
Oh man.
in working order. So
Yeah.
I was like, "Do you have any other time
No.
from after you've replace strings and clean the blood off of Ritter's guitars? Like, do
Oh,
you have
the
any other
blood.
time?" Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. But you
Well-
always did, man. You always did. I'm so grateful for that.
Oh man, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure being around. It was a pleasure having you. And our podcast, it's called Is Breakfast Included? If we were having breakfast, Mark, what would you have?
Oh, I gotta go like the full like sunny side up eggs and bacon and maybe bacon and sausage.
Okay.
And if I'm really treating myself, like if there's a biscuit there, I think, depending on where in the US I am, if I'm down
You and
south.
Bernie have a perfect breakfast together.
We had a couple
Sharing
breakfasts
biscuits.
together.
We did. We had a couple of
Yeah,
breakfasts
we
on the
did.
road.
Yep. We were morning people, so it was good.
Coffee, orange juice.
Oh,
what's your-
coffee. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
As much as I can fit in before it starts overflowing.
Well, brother, it was good seeing you. It was a pleasure talking to you. And thanks again for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Great to
Yeah.
see you guys. And take care.
Yeah.
Right on, Mark Erelli. I told you were just going to fall in love with the guy by the end of this interview, right? I know we did. I did all over again. You heard him. He really doesn't care for social media, but he would prefer you to go to markerelli.com, sign up for his newsletter. You get a free MP3 every month. He's been doing that, 20 years, he said. Sign up for his Patreon, follow him, go see him when he's near you. Buy his albums, buy physical copies. Not just him, anybody that's on this show or any of your friends who are in a band, man, buy their physical copies, buy their merch. That's where it helps independent artists. And of course, while you're online, go to isbreakfast.com and help us out, man. Buy a physical shirt. Go to our store and buy one physical shirt each. And if you each do this, we probably will be able to put out more episodes. I'm joking. We're going to do it anyway. Our broke asses are going to do it anyway. Anyway, sign up for that. Go to our Instagram, follow us, go to our YouTube, like, subscribe, and comment. Good comments. And anyway, I'm done. I'm annoying you. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.